This is a very, very dark time because it looks like the president has finally violated a direct court order. The Trump administration is claiming that—
I was talking to LegalEagle about this a couple days ago. Like, this is now we're officially in the legal fascist stage.
They can deport anyone, including presumably American citizens, without due process, simply by calling them a member of a gang which has been labeled as a terrorist organization, claiming authority from a law from the late 1700s. On March 16, 2025, the Trump administration deported, or more accurately, renditioned over 200 alleged members of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua to El Salvador, despite a federal judge's order to halt such actions. Hundreds of Venezuelans, some seeking asylum, were renditioned away from the country with no due process, no evidence, no hearings, and no judges. And in fact, some were scheduled to have hearings, but were loaded on a plane and deported to prevent that hearing from taking place. Credible reports are already coming in that several of the Venezuelans were not members of any gang and were labeled as such simply because they had one or more tattoos. You'll note, of course, that the deported Venezuelans were not from El Salvador, yet the deported individuals appear to have been transferred to El Salvador's terrorism detention center, which may be acting like an extrajudicial private prison under a $6 million agreement between the United States and El Salvadoran President Nayib Bukele, who calls himself the world's coolest dictator. The administration invoked the 1798 Alien Enemies Act to expedite the deportations, claiming the law is necessary to address the gang's involvement in crimes like kidnapping, extortion, and contract killings. But the deportations proceeded even after federal judge James Boasberg directed the government to turn around any planes carrying individuals being removed pursuant to—
It's so funny seeing a judge like this. Like, look at him, bro. I mean, I don't even know if he's like a Obama judge or a Bush judge, but he just does not look like a liberal guy. Like, you got judges that look like Dracula being like, you can't deport people without due process. The fuck are you doing? And everyone's like, shut up, woke judge. It's like, woke, look at me. I look like I eat children for breakfast. Like, you got people who are just like, dude, this very clearly is broaching on incredibly dangerous territory. You're like breaking the Constitution. Can you not do that? I don't give a, like, he not the type of guy who's like, I really care about Mexicans or whatever, you know? He's just like, simply on the basis of the constitutionality of what the Trump administration is doing, it's like not allowed.
Trump's alien
there you go. Of course, Bush appointee elevated by the O'Bungler because of course he did. There you go. There you go.
Proclamation. It appears the Trump administration did not turn the planes around, and one or more planes even took off after the order was given. It appears that the Trump administration is defying a court's order to deport people to a foreign gulag. Trump's actions are an unprecedented challenge to the Constitution and the rule of law. I think this is going to be a historical black mark on this country, where people's clear civil rights were infringed and basically eviscerated for no real benefit.
Wait, oh my, I love being proven right so fast. Look at this. Donald Trump and MAGA always seem to have a target, a hate figure, a boogeyman right now, and it's District Judge James Jeb Boasberg. Judge Boasberg's conservative rulings include leniency on insurrectionists, which contradicts MAGA's claims that he's a radical leftist. Kay Caitlin said the judge was Obama appointed to. Obama probably elevated him because that's what Democrats do. Democrats love elevating previously. He probably wasn't, dude. First of all, most judges are not liberal. There are some, but like judges in general, not exactly known for being super liberal. Okay. This guy is a former homicide prosecutor who was appointed to the head of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court by Chief Justice John Roberts. Boasberg oversaw dozens of cases associated with insurrection. Judge often issued sentences significantly more lenient than what the prosecutors recommended. In August 2016, Boasberg ordered the expedited release of thousands of emails the FBI found through his investigation. Boasberg is not biased against Trump. He is not a left-wing or an Obama judge. Yeah. Appointed by President George W. Bush, he served as a judge of the Superior Court of the District of Columbia before Barack Obama nominated him to the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia. That was Jay Mershon who initially said that in the chat. So that guy, who also looks the part, is probably not woke. And guess what? He's not. He's not fucking woke at all. It's ridiculous to say he is.
During Trump's appearance at the Department of Justice last week, he announced that he was about to deport people he believed were associates of Venezuelan gangs. Now, some of that could be true, but we don't know because these individuals have not received due process.
That's the Venezuelan gang, the toughest gang, they say, in the world, and the Mexican drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. That's a big deal. Nobody wanted to do that. And by the way, we've caught hundreds of them, the Venezuelan gang, which is as bad as it gets. And you'll be reading a lot of stories tomorrow about what we've done with them. And you'll be very impressed, and you'll feel a lot safer, too, because they are a vicious group.
On March 15, 2025, President Trump issued a proclamation invoking the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to expedite the deportations of Venezuelan nationals associated with the criminal organization Tren de Aragua. This group was designated by the Trump administration as a foreign terrorist organization in January 2025 and has been implicated in various criminal activities, including murder, kidnapping, extortion, and trafficking of humans, drugs, and weapons. Now, normally those allegations would be adjudicated in the normal criminal and immigration process. But the proclamation categorized Venezuelan.
The food finally came in, but I fucking feel full now, finally. This is why I need to eat what I eat every day. I need to eat like 7 pounds of chicken, because if I don't eat 7 pounds of chicken, my body is just like demanding more food. Gluttony, one of the original sins. Okay, dude. I got a club sandwich. And now I actually do feel kind of full. Not kind of. I mean, I could still down this shit easy, but
nationals over the age of 14 who are neither U.S. citizens nor lawful permanent residents as, quote, alien enemies, thereby authorizing their expedited removal from the United States. Expedited removal purports to allow immigration officials to quickly deport people without a formal hearing before an immigration judge. Trump's proclamation does not define what it means to be a member of Tren de Aragua, and reports indicate that the administration began deportations even before Trump had issued the proclamation. Now, the Alien Enemies Act is one of the controversial Alien and Sedition Acts that Congress passed in 1798 under President John Adams. These 4 laws suppressed political opposition and tightened the president's control over immigration. In response to the growing tensions with France, Adams sought more control over newspapers, immigration, and naturalization. The laws quickly became tools for the Federalist Party to target its political adversaries, particularly supporters of Thomas Jefferson and the Democratic Republicans. The Alien Enemies Act purported to allow the president to detain or deport immigrants from nations with which the U.S. was at war. During World War II, President Franklin D. Roosevelt invoked the act to justify the internment of enemy aliens, specifically Japanese, German, and Italian nationals residing in the United States. And the act is still on the books today. You can take a look at the text codified at 50 U.S.C. 21. Quote, whenever there is a declared war between the United States and any foreign national or government, or any invasion or predatory incursion is perpetrated, attempted, or threatened against the territory of the United States by any foreign national or government, and the president makes public proclamation of the event, all native citizens, denizens, or subjects of the hostile nation or government, being of the age of 14 years and upward, shall be within the United States and not actually naturalized, shall be liable to be apprehended, restrained, secured, and removed as alien enemies. Trump's proclamation tracks the statute by stating that the U.S. would deport any member of Tren de Aragua who is over the age of 14 and does not have a green card. Now, according to the text, the president can only assert these sweeping powers when the United States is in a declared war against a nation or government, or when a foreign national or government is invading or attempting to invade the United States. Until now, the government has only used the statute during 3 actual wars: the War of 1812, World War I, and World War II. Trump's claim that we are at war with Venezuela or a Venezuelan gang is an unprecedented power grab by a president in peacetime. So on March 15th, 5 Venezuelan nationals detained in U.S. immigration facilities challenged their imminent deportation. They filed a lawsuit before Trump had issued his proclamation. They argued that the use of the act to justify their removal was unconstitutional because historically the statute has only been applied during formal wars, not in response to non-state actors like criminal organizations. The plaintiffs also argued that while the gang may pose security concerns, it's not an entity comparable to a hostile foreign power, and therefore does not meet the legal criteria necessary to trigger the Alien Enemies Act provisions. The plaintiffs emphasized that Trump's proclamation allows for the immediate deportation of Venezuelan nationals without access to legal review or due process protections.
Insane.
And they claim that this violates the Fifth Amendment's Due Process Clause, which guarantees that non-citizens have the right to challenge government actions affecting their liberty. Based on what I'm seeing, I worry that this case was chosen on purpose as a test case for defying a court order. News reporting is credulously stating that the deportees are Venezuelan gang members, and while that may be true for some of them, no evidence has been presented of that fact. And based on other reporting, it's definitely not true for some of them. Additionally, the plaintiffs argued that the government has engaged in tactical...
Whether they're all criminal gang members or not doesn't matter. I need you to understand this. Every single one of them could have been a fucking monstrous terrorist. And Trump is still not allowed to do this. You cannot do this without due process. Because what have I said over and over again? No due process means... tomorrow, they could say, you're a fucking terrorist. And you're like, whoa, wait a minute. No, I'm not even undocumented. I have documentation. Sorry. Now you're in fucking El Salvador. That's the problem. I don't give a fuck if every single one of them was a like psychopathic serial rapist mass murderer. They're already apprehended. They have to be placed in front of a fucking judge. You can't do that. The fuck do you mean? You're like, nah, I decided you're a terrorist. Now you're getting fucking deported. Like, that makes no sense. And that's why we're hearing stories, like horrifying stories of people that are just like tattoo artists or soccer players, and they just simply have tattoos that the government has decided is enough evidence, without showing a judge, by the way, because there's a different standard. There's a different standard for apprehension. There's a different standard for detention. There's a different standard to charge you for things. And there's a very different standard to convict you. You cannot fucking convict someone without going through due process. Because when you do that, that means they can come after whoever the fuck they want. And they'll just say, yep, it's terrorism time.
Relocations to expedite their removals. They assert that detained Venezuelan immigrants were transferred to Texas so they could be swiftly deported before they had the chance to file legal challenges. On what basis can you send Venezuelan immigrants to El Salvador? I have no idea. I've not seen any credible legal defense for renditioning hundreds of Venezuelans to a for-profit prison in El Salvador where they're going to do hard labor. My hunch is that there's probably a reason why this has never been done before. These, again, Venezuelans were effectively sold into slave labor in a country they might not have ever been to before. And if the government has proof that the individuals were members of Tren de Aragua, then why not go through the traditional removal process, affording them the opportunity to present evidence to the contrary? And in fact, some of the people who were deported had hearings already scheduled where the government could have made their case. Now, we recently covered the wide discretion that immigration courts have in the context of Mahmoud Khalil, and it's likely that many of these deportees would have been deported through the regular process. But the Trump executive order circumvents even the modicum of due process that would have been afforded under regular immigration procedures. This should concern everyone, because since there is no due process, anyone, including American citizens, could simply be labeled a member, loaded on a plane, and renditioned to a seemingly...
I've been screaming about this for the past couple of days. I don't think people understand that. I think if you were to try to explain this to Asmongold, he would be like, okay, yeah, that's not a good idea. You know what I mean? But they just aren't thinking about it somehow. I don't know. I don't know what the fuck's going on. Yeah, maybe not based. That's what he would say. You have to be genuinely, you have to be so stupid not to recognize how dangerous this is. You truly have to be a new level of stupid to look at the situation and be like, due process, who cares? That, I don't know. You got no survival instincts. You know, you have no... This is not like a pie in the sky, hard to define situation. It's very, very obvious what's going on. There are immediate telltale signs that this will go wrong. It has gone wrong in the past. We're there right now.
Random foreign country's prison. And at least one of the deportees claims, and you can take it with whatever grain of salt that you want, he was seeking asylum in the US because he was LGBT and was specifically fleeing gang violence in Venezuela. It now appears that a large number of the deportees had no criminal background, but the Trump administration says that these people are terrorists, and worse, the government says that the lack of evidence about their activities actually proves how much they are terrorists. Quote, "Well, it is true that many of the TDA members removed under the AEA do not have criminal records in the United States. That is because they have only been in the United States for a short period of time. The lack of criminal record does not indicate they pose a limited threat. In fact, based upon their association..."
What? Bro, they literally said the absence of evidence means that they're even better criminals than we thought before. They're definitely doing crimes, because you can't be Venezuelan on U.S. soil. You're definitely up to some shit, right? Because I'm racist. I'm racist as fuck. So obviously, I believe if you're Venezuelan on U.S. soil, you're doing terrorism, duh. And if I can't find any terrorism that you've done, that means you're the arch terrorist. You're so good at the terrorism that you're fucking doing it and it's invisible. No one even knows you're doing it. What the fuck? How is this actually on paper?
In EDA, the lack of specific information about each individual actually highlights the risk they pose. It demonstrates that they are terrorists with regard to whom we lack a complete profile. So for all these reasons, the plaintiffs asked a federal court in Washington, D.C. for a temporary restraining order to halt these removals while they were in the process of happening. Now, if you're going to defy a federal court judge, you'll want a good lawyer. But if you want a great lawyer, my law firm, the Eagle Team, can help. If you've gotten in a car crash, suffered a data breach, especially if you got one of those data breach letters saying your information might have been leaked, or dealing with a workers' comp or social security issue, we can represent you or help find you the right attorney. And by the way, we don't get paid unless you do, so there's nothing up front. So just click on the link in the description or call the phone number on screen for a free consultation.
You don't want the legal team.
You
want
the
legal
legal
team.
You need the Eagle Team. Now, the plaintiffs filed their lawsuit on Saturday morning, which is already unusual. And later that same day, the chief judge for the District of D.C., James Boasberg, granted a narrow TRO, temporarily preventing the removal of the individual plaintiffs for 14 days. The judge determined that immediate deportations would irreparably harm the plaintiffs by depriving them of due process rights before they had an opportunity to challenge the government's actions. And the judge's order happened before Trump had officially issued his proclamation and before the government had a chance to respond. But the judge felt he had to act because if the deportations went through, the plaintiffs would suffer irreparable harm. They would be jailed in a foreign country. Now, the initial TRO was limited in scope, applying only to the 5 named plaintiffs in the case. The judge ordered the government to halt their removal while the court reviewed the legal merits of the...
Guys, it's literally Dracula. The person that they are calling a woke judge, I'm sorry. Not only do we know his background, so it's not even like a meme, but you got fucking Nosferatu up in here being like, I'm an evil guy. I love doing evil. But this is a bridge too far because I think evil should be done within the confines of pre-established law. Right? Like, do you understand what's going on here? They're calling this guy a DEI judge now. What the fuck is going on with the Republicans, man?
Administration's use of the Alien Enemies Act. But shortly before the 5 p.m. on a weekend emergency hearing, Trump finally issued the proclamation the plaintiffs had anticipated. Now, the timing of the proclamation raises another legal issue. Was there a secret order authorizing the removal of the detainees before Saturday afternoon? In the week leading up to the deportation, some of the detainees missed deportation hearings because the government had moved them in preparation for these unlawful deportations. And during the hearing, ACLU lawyer LegalEagle asserted that at least 2 planes containing the Venezuelans were already taking off. So the parties took a short break so that the DOJ's main lawyer arguing the case, Deputy Assistant Attorney General Drew Ensign, could consult with his clients. He confirmed that the flights were in the air. Now, all the hearings that we're going to talk about were public in the sense that lawyers could call in, but people were not allowed to record them. So I'm relying on the accounts of the lawyers that actually called in. And according to civil rights lawyer Remy Green, Judge Boasberg agreed with the plaintiffs that the act did not apply, saying, quote, invasion means war. This also means the government, not gangs. The Alien Enemies Act doesn't work. Judge Boasberg also warned the government to follow.
I don't give a shit about due process.
Asylum seekers are not criminals. What's to stop the government from picking up Hispanic-looking person, claiming they're part of Tren de Aragua, then deporting them to prison without due process? You seriously don't see a problem with that? I don't know what the process is either. I think that they should follow whatever the process is, but I just don't really give a shit that much about it, right? I mean, like, that's it. Like,
I don't think he knows what due process means. Like, I think he thinks like you guys think he's being evil here. It's actually funnier than that. No, he just doesn't know what that word means. Like, I think he doesn't understand it. Like, he doesn't understand what what the term implies. I think he just thinks there's a process and people should follow it.
I understand that, like, this is, again, more fear-mongering, right? You're taking a bunch of people.
That's not fear-mongering, dude. That is literally the whole point. They have officially violated due process, as in having to go through a court system. Everyone has a right to a trial, okay? It is enshrined in the law. Citizens, non-citizens alike. The reason for why everyone has a right to a trial in a court of law is because what if people just decided that you did the crime and put you in fucking jail? We need to have a universal principle applied. That's the due process. I mean, the person basically described what due process is in the question, or at the very least, like, explained why a violation of due process is so damaging, because then you could just, like, bring up someone randomly and deport them. This is, alongside the First Amendment, one of the best aspects of our fucking rules and regulations. There's a lot that's wrong with the American Constitution, but there's some that's actually pretty solid, okay? And the Trump administration is actively going after 2 of those principles that are incredibly solid, that kind of are like the last bastion of holding everything together. It's the last thing that makes us like a normal government. I don't think he understands what due process means, though. And if he did, maybe he would still make the same argument, because he's still seemingly very careless because he thinks like, oh, it'll never happen to me. But there's a reason why so many like non-criminals are getting immigrant enforcement action right now with no way out of it.
His order, quote, DOJ, you shall inform your client of this immediately. Any plane containing these folks cannot take off.
Is illegal residence a crime in and of itself? There are differences. There are varying degrees of crimes. Okay. Some of the people that are being processed are ironically not even illegal immigrants. Like, they're not undocumented non-citizens. They have documentation, whether it be temporary protected status or some other form of documentation, whether it be a student visa or an H-1B visa or a green card, which is the highest form of permanent residency you can retain before you become a full-fledged naturalized U.S. citizen. And the Trump administration is basically going after every variety. Now, the issue here is if you don't have due process, if you don't actually go through the proper protocols of like figuring out what the rule break was and also adjudicate on whether or not it is necessary to deport this person or remove their citizenship. If you don't do any of that and you just decide this is an immigrant enforcement action, like without any sort of court system whatsoever, you can fucking do that to anyone. Because if ICE comes knocking down your door and arrests you and you don't have your fucking ID on you, what are you going to do? They decided you're Mexican. You're like, what do you mean I'm Mexican? I'm Turkish. My name is Hasan. Shut the fuck up. You're Mexican now, boy. Okay. We're all Mexican now, you know? What do? There's no judge. There's no legal process. There's no interest in figuring out whether you have done a crime or whether you are Mexican, you know? You got tattoos, boy. You're Mexican now. A Mexicano with some tattoos. You're going to jail. You're going to El Salvador. That's insane. Like, when I describe the actions that the Trump administration is doing, it just like fucking genuinely shocks me. Like, dude, they are grabbing random fucking people, claiming that they're terrorists, and then shipping them to a concentration work camp in fucking El Salvador without judges seeing what the fuck is up. Like, even the FISA court process is somehow not as insane as this, and that was fucking insane. Why? Because the FISA court process still was a rubber stamp, but at least it was like above board. Okay? It was a rubber stamp for mass surveillance. Having said that, there was at least still like there was still a stamping process. Now we're just not even doing the stamping process. We just moved on. Like, they're not even trying to find, like, they're not even trying to judge shop. They're not even trying to find a judge that, like, with Mahmoud Khalil, they did judge shop, right? They wanted to find, like, a good judge that would definitely do a deportation immediately, right? Like some real freak, Louisiana, right? But with this situation, they didn't even do that. They just said, yup, nope, you're done. And the judge was like, hold on, let's take a look. What do you mean? You can't just deport people? Are they criminals? What's their deal? And you were like, sorry, they're already deported. Okay, did you deport them to their nation? Or no, I sent them to a work concentration camp in El Salvador. That is a for-profit prison. Sorry. The planes were in the air already. The fuck?
It's in the air. It must turn
like,
around.
Look at this. Look at this article title. Trump defies judge to deport Venezuelans to Salvadoran slave jail. That is what's going on.
Plaintiffs who had access to the official transcript of the hearing later confirmed the exchange. And with respect to the original 5 plaintiffs, the judge said, quote, I would assume that means that they, the 5 named plaintiffs, are either not on the planes or that they will not be removed from the planes and will be brought back once the planes land in El Salvador. Is that fair? Now, these exchanges are really important because they show that the judge was clear about the parameters of his order. When the court winds up deciding whether to hold the government in civil contempt of court, which we'll talk about later, the plaintiffs will have to prove that the orders were clear and that there wasn't any room for interpretation. After the hearing, Judge Boasberg explained the TRO to cover all Venezuelan nationals at risk of removal. Additionally, he certified the case as a class action, broadening the protections beyond just the individual plaintiffs. The government immediately appealed the TRO, and as we've discussed, TROs are generally not appealable, but, YOLO. But that wasn't all the government did, because despite the court's order, Trump continued the deportations. The government officials argued that individuals whose PRO was issued, such as those on deportation flights over international waters, were outside the jurisdiction of the court. Plaintiffs filed a response explaining, quote, whether or not the planes had cleared U.S. territory, the U.S. retained custody at least until the planes landed and the individuals were turned over to foreign governments. Again, just so we're clear, if planes have already landed and discharged their occupants, aside from the 5 plaintiffs I enjoined earlier, then this order, I don't have jurisdiction to require their return. Plaintiffs filed a response explaining, quote, whether or not the planes had cleared U.S. territory, the U.S. retained custody at least until the planes landed and the individuals were turned over to foreign governments. And the court could not have been clear that it was concerned with losing jurisdiction and authority to order the individuals returned if they were handed over to foreign governments, not with whether the planes had cleared U.S.
U.S. President Donald Trump signs an executive order to downsize the Education Department alongside school children signing their own version of the White House. The order is intended to shrink the $100 billion department, which cannot be dissolved without congressional approval. Children applaud as U.S. President Donald Trump attends an event to sign an executive order to shut down the Department of Education. What is happening in this country, dude? What is going on? This is the most cooked we've ever been. And judging by the way things are going, it's not, tomorrow's going to be even more cooked. This is the most cooked we've ever been. And tomorrow we'll be cooking even harder. Based. Yeah, it's based. Who needs education? I certainly don't. You don't either. Based. Yeah, school's gay.
Territory or had even landed in another country. Now, there's generally no I'm traveling exception to court orders. You're either within the court's jurisdiction or you aren't. And I don't want to get off on a tangent about courts of law versus courts of equity, but here the court was exercising its equity powers, but about 500 years of jurisprudence between America and England show that the court's equity jurisdiction extends beyond the territorial borders of the country. And so long as the defendant is within the court's jurisdiction, you can command it to do things that are outside of that particular country. The judge set a hearing for 2 days later at 5 p.m. on Monday. And he asked the administration to prepare answers to questions such as whether any flight with individuals subject to the proclamation took off after either the court's written or oral orders were issued. Now, 1 hour before the 5 p.m. hearing, the DOJ filed a notice telling the court that it should cancel the hearing, quote, because there has been no violation of the court's orders and because the government is not prepared to disclose any further national security or operational security details. This is brazenly inappropriate, and the judge immediately rejected the administration's attempt to get out of the hearing. And in the DOJ's filing, it argued that the court's orders usurp the president's authority as commander-in-chief. It characterized the judge's injunction as oral and therefore unenforceable. That's not how things work, but they argued, quote, contrary to plaintiff's assertion, the oral directive is not enforceable as an injunction. That principle holds especially true when the court does issue a written order, but phrases it more narrowly. In that event, the written order controls. Now, you might be wondering, how is the written order narrower than the oral one? Well, it used the word removing, which the government says does not apply to people who were past tense removed. The Trump administration said, quote, as to any flights that were already outside U.S. territory and airspace, anyone aboard had already been removed within the meaning of the Alien Enemies Act and the court's order, and therefore were not covered by the order. Now, this is an absurd claim in every respect, and it very well...
Dude, Republicans are so fucking ruthless. This is, I wish, semantic fascism, that's like unironically 90% of their mandate. Like that's where it comes from. They set up a goal in mind and then they will use, what do I always say? I always tell you, like, they will go to like the fucking, 18th century to be like, well, there was a rule that was written in the rule book that says that, women can't wear pants. So we've decided you're fired. Okay. We've decided you're deported. Like, that's how they do it. They come up with a conclusion and then they work their way back from said conclusion. They go back and they get a bunch of fucking paralegals and lawyers to pour through thousands of cases to try to find a legal justification for it. It has nothing to do with like the actual precedent. Obviously, many of these things are precedent setting in and of itself. But this is how it works. In the most reductive and simplest terms, they will find anything that they can to justify what they're doing. when in fact the goal is just to be able to do it, unleash the new precedent and be able to do it freely without any sort of legal restrictions.
Lead to sanctions. Oral orders carry this.
This is also working its way up to SCOTUS, and if SCOTUS rules in favor of the Trump admin, it sets two terrifying precedents. One, the president can literally ignore any order of a federal judge. Two, you can be deported purely based on vibes and without any semblance of due process. Terrifying shit. Just goes to show how much worse it can get. Yeah. No, I get it. I mean, same with the fucking Mahmoud Khalil thing. The Mahmoud Khalil thing means that you can be deported for what you're saying. Like, you can be a legal permanent resident and perhaps even a citizen, and you can get criminal penalties or deportation for your speech. You can get this would criminalize speech. This would criminalize speech and destroy free speech for non-citizens. Paired up with this other new precedent, you can literally do whatever you want to non-citizens. Like, if you're on American soil, I mean, you can do it whatever you want to even citizens too. It just doesn't stop there. This is not a slippery slope. These are well-established rules that they are breaking deliberately so that they can solidify the rule breaking and turn it into the new rule. That is what they're doing. Like, they can go up to an American citizen and be like, "You're looking real Mexican today. I've decided you're a terrorist." And now you're going to El Salvador, to a fucking slave prison in El Salvador with no way out. And you're like, "Hold on, no, I'm American. What do you mean terrorist? Like, why are you claiming that I'm a Mexican terrorist?" Nope, sorry, for-profit slave prison time. Wheels up, bitch. Wheels up. The plane is in the air. That means the judge has no jurisdiction any longer. Guess what? The Supreme Court gave us that power. That's what we're looking at. As long as they can do it in a expedited manner, they can send anyone's ass to a for-profit slave prison that we fucking outsourced to El Salvador. They also want to possibly do some Israel shit and move over into the southern border of Mexico, where they will create a security barrier and potentially establish detention facilities. They want to put detention facilities in the southern border on the Mexican side. Yeah, also they did that. They racially profiled the U.S. citizen and almost deported him. I know. It was a fucking Trump supporter, too. It's so funny. Okay, there's another one. There's another one. Wait, is this the wife? No, this is not the wife one. The wife one is the funniest one. The fucking wife one is the funniest one. It's harrowing, but it's like one of the unique ones where it's like, it's so insane that it's kind of funny because of the response of the Trump supporting husband. I tweeted about it last night. Look at this one. This story is actually psychotic. "I don't regret the vote," Bradley Bartell said after his wife was detained by ICE as they returned home from their honeymoon. Bartell is looking to raise $3,000 towards Camilla Munoz's release from ICE custody. This is not The Onion. This is a real American hog. This is not The Onion. This is not fake. This is not Babylon Bee. This is fucking Newsweek. That is a real article written by a real American patriot. Written about a real American patriot. A real American patriot who went on a honeymoon with his wife, and then they returned from their honeymoon, and ICE apprehended her. Bradley Bartell's wife, Camila Munoz, a Peruvian citizen who overstayed her initial visa, but was working towards obtaining a permanent residency in the United States. Despite the couple's ordeal, Bartell still supports Trump, who has vowed to conduct the largest mass deportation operation in U.S. history. "I don't regret the vote," Bartell told Newsweek in an exclusive statement. Bro, if she ever gets out of prison and isn't sent to the slave labor camp in El Salvador and reads this fucking article, I feel like they're not going to be married for much longer. I read this, I'm going to be like, yeah, send me back to fucking Peru, dude. What the hell is this? This shit sucks. She's also a Trump supporter. Yeah, I don't think she still is. It's like, I'm finally done. I'm done. I'm done with this shit. I hate my wife. My kids are constantly on the iPad. They're talking skibbity toilet. Okay, they're talking phantom tax. I don't understand it. I don't give a fuck about none of this. I'm trying to go back to Guatemala, get some pussy. This shit sucks. The weather is ass over here. I was wrong. This is not the land of the free. This is not the home of the brave. There's just like, there's only a little bit of gruel that I can consume at the end of the fucking long business day that I conducted, where I, had to do horrible labor for pennies on the fucking dollar. I'm done. I'm out. Fuck my kids. I hate them.
My mother is waiting for me.
He hasn't seen his mom since he moved to the United States.
I don't want to lose her without being able to hug her again.
While his family is waiting for him in Guatemala, he's also leaving family.
It's so funny to do a press conference like this. Oh, God, I love small town news. You know what I mean? It's awesome. This guy's great. He's just like, I'm doing a press conference. I'm taking my talents back to Guatemala. Okay. Yeah, I'm self-deporting.
Behind.
The situation is difficult. It's painful. It's necessary.
Carlos Pacheco, originally from Guatemala. This man does not. This man. Bro's a LeBron James of cheating on his wife, dude. Okay, which LeBron would never, of course, obviously. Saying like LeBron James to basketball is Carlos Pacheco to cheating on his wife. He did the decision video, but for moving back to Guatemala.
It's necessary.
He says his wife and kids are documented, but he received a deportation order. Now he wants to leave for his peace.
I'm aware that they don't want us. And it's time to go back. We have to do it.
He's also maybe giving up the right of ever seeing his wife and children again.
Immigration lawyer Roger McCruman is not familiar with Carlos Pacheco's specific situation, but deals with similar cases.
Would you say that the self-deportation process is simpler and easier than the deportation process?
Yeah, I mean, it's better than being escorted out of the country in handcuffs. I mean, you're leaving on your own free will. It is at your own expense. If the government deports you, they pay for it.
A price Carlos is willing to pay.
They've told me I'm a coward for abandoning my family. But on the contrary,
bro,
we know where we were born.
Bro, this man does not like the cold winter. Okay, look at him. Like, he just straight up is like, look around, man. This shit sucks. I got a fucking off-brand North Face on me, and it's not doing the job. Okay, there is snow on my body. I am shivering. I don't want to be here no more, okay? Y'all are racist as hell. I don't want to be here. I hate my ass wife. I hate my stupid ass children. I want to leave. I need to go back to Guatemala.
But we don't know where we will die.
He's like, I don't even have one jacket. I got 2 jackets on, and it's still cold as shit.
In Guatemala, he has hopes of better and warmer days.
I'm telling you, dude. Even the journalist recognizes it. She knows what's up. She knows what's up. She knows. Yep, caught. Pacheco is looking for better and warmer days.
In the Silva, KSHB 41 News.
That's so funny. The crazy thing is that Overland Park is known for being a hoity-toity ass place, and KS Lamau is like a nice ass suburbs. I don't think this man is hurting financially either. Dude, this was your Uber driver on the way to the event.
Do you know that
today, like several times?
800,000 to 1 million kids get kidnapped a year? Do you know that?
Is that real?
I don't know. Look it up. I don't know.
Where'd you read that?
I don't know. I mean, somewhere online. I don't know if it's true. Do you know that 800,000 to 1 million kids get kidnapped a year? Do you know that?
It's funny, but it's so sad. It's funny, but it's also... Oh... on the one hand is hilarious. On the other hand, both of my Uber drivers today were perfect representatives of the median voter. Do you understand? Like, I was reading chat, and it's so funny that, like, chat is definitely a hug box, and not necessarily a hug box of like leftist thought or whatever, but a hug box of just any kind of political thought. Like, y'all think people think deeply about their political convictions. They don't. The second Uber driver was much nicer. Also, a lot of you thought she was a white woman. She was not. She was a black woman, for the record. And I think that probably played a role in her having like some understanding of racism, which you know, because if she was a white woman, she'd be exactly like the first Uber driver. Okay. So just pointing that out for people. But most people don't think, period. Like, most people don't think at all. And those who do think are very rarely ever thinking about politics. I wanted people to get a better understanding of like average human beings, because I feel like I never show you that, like a normal conversation with a normal person and how to navigate those conversations, because some of y'all, unfortunately, are a little too neurospicy to have conversations like that without like thinking that it's an opportunity for debate. You need to pay close attention to the way I handle those conversations. Many of y'all say coworker conversations, but now I'm beginning to realize maybe you don't have any coworkers, because if you have any coworkers, you've encountered that a million times. Like, that was a coworker ass convo that I had, both of them. One coworker that you kind of like and it's kind of chill. The other one that is like insane. Okay. The first Uber driver is the guy that you can only talk to about one specific issue, right? Maybe it's electric vehicles, or maybe it's photography because he was really interested in that, and nothing else. The moment that you broach any subject matter beyond photography, he became he became an insane individual. Okay? You got to figure out how to have those conversations with those people. I live in Mississippi. That dude is the average lib here. Yeah, I thought that was like convos that you normally have all the time, which is why you come into this community, because you don't want to you want to maintain sanity in a sea of having conversations like that. But chat was alarming in the way that they were reacting to both of these people. You have to remember, most people are stupid as fuck, dude. They don't know anything. What are you talking about? They haven't put a lot of thought into it. You see them in my comments every day. Not everyone is like well equipped with the information and being malicious. Some people are just misinformed and dumb. Like the first Uber driver. He's a victim to the Manosphere style podcast. Because his eyes lit up. Bro, his eyes lit up. He might be in here watching right now because he probably went back and he saw the Theo Vaughn episode and was like, oh, hell yeah. And then it was like, oh my God, I was housing a radical terrorist in my car. The best thing I think you can do in situations like that, in conversations like that, is to just be chill. Be a likable, cool person. So that even if your thoughts don't penetrate immediately, your overall vibes are good. So then they're like, you know what? I like this guy. I think he's a smart, young whippersnapper. I'm going to listen to what he has to say. That's how it works. You might win people over, not immediately on the virtue of the argument, but instead you might win them over by just being a cool person to be around. You have to remember that. I'm not saying I'm young, chat. Don't worry. When I said young whippersnapper, I meant obviously other people in the chat who are young. 33. Be cool. Be likable, be normal. Let's get back to the harrowing realities of the Trump administration violating all norms and creating a constitutional crisis.
Some legal weight as written ones, And in this case, the judge issued a written order reinforcing his oral directive. So Trump's argument boils down to this. The government ignored the oral order and deported the detainees, and now the written order doesn't apply because the deportations have already happened. It's a circular defense, with Trump justifying defiance of one order as a reason to disregard the next, and is exactly the kind of BS that a court in equity is likely to take to task. Now, before the hearing, the DOJ also sent a bizarre letter to the DC Circuit, the Court of Appeals, demanding that the case be reassigned because Judge Boasberg is biased. Quote, the government cannot...
He's biased. Bye-bye. He's biased.
Not and will not be forced to answer sensitive questions of national security and foreign relations in a rushed posture without ordering briefing and a showing that these questions are somehow material to a live issue. He's a Yale law grad who started as a prosecutor in the U.S. Attorney's Office for D.C. As a judge, he served on the Alien Terrorist Removal Court and the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, so he's not someone who's likely to take a claim of national security lightly. And he also once ruled against plaintiffs who wanted Trump's tax return, so it's not as if he has some kind of axe to grind against Trump in particular. The government is claiming they cannot provide details on national security grounds, but the claims of national security are at odds with the public displays that they have made. The White House posted propaganda videos of the immigrants landing in El Salvador, and the flights were public and many people tracked them in real time. El Salvador's Bukele posted a story about the TRO and said, quote, oopsie, too late, laughing emoji. And Secretary of State Marco Rubio retweeted that. But it's very clear that the government was trying his patience. March 17th hearing, the government refused to answer the judge's 4 questions that he asked. First of all, the lawyers would not confirm whether the original 5 plaintiffs were still in the U.S. or whether they had been deported. The lawyers, who did not include the original arguing attorney, Mr. Ensign, said that they were only authorized to say that the flights which took place after the court's first order were not subject to the court's ruling, which could mean that none of the 5 plaintiffs were on those flights, but we don't know for sure. Judge Boasberg asked the government why they couldn't share the information in camera, meaning in private, and the lawyers said they cannot share why they cannot share. That's ridiculous. That's not how that works. Judge Boasberg explained that he reviews classified information all the time. According to immigration lawyer Aaron Reisland-Melnick, who listened to the hearing, Boasberg cited case law saying that the government is required to actually provide a clear reason before refusing to provide him classified or national security information. He asked if the DOJ can provide in writing tomorrow by noon what their position is communicating the info to him. And that's definitely correct. If you refuse to give a federal judge that information, you have to explain why. Boasberg only mentioned contempt of court 1 time, but the point of the hearing was to gather facts to determine whether he should find the government in contempt. The DOJ lawyers argued that the judge's short written order, issued 40 minutes after the initial oral hearing, superseded anything that he said orally. And the judges claimed they acted in good faith in only viewing the written order as binding. According to Melnick, the lawyers argued that because the judge's written order didn't include every word he spoke in court, they believed they could simply ignore what he said. The judge then apparently said, quote, so when I said, Mr. Ensign, you should inform your clients immediately, however that's accomplished, whether it means turning around to plane, etc., you need to make sure this is complied with immediately. You're telling me your first argument is that when I said those things, because it wasn't in a minute order, you didn't have to comply. That's your argument? You're telling me that very clear point. You're saying that you felt that you could disregard it because it wasn't in the written order. That's your first argument. And the government's lawyer responded, quote, I'm stating what the position of the United States is. Judge Boasberg, like the rest of us, was incredulous. He said, quote, you knew in the morning that there would be a hearing at 5 p.m. So any planes you were putting in the air, you knew you had that hearing coming. So you're saying that because any minute order was pithier, that's a heck of a stretch, I think. Now, any federal practitioner knows that oral orders are binding, and if they didn't think they had to comply with it, then why didn't they just speak up during the actual hearing when the judge made the ruling? Now, personally, I would rather commit ritual seppuku than make this particular argument. But the DOJ then pivoted to its next argument, that once the flights were over international waters, the judge lost jurisdiction. But Boasberg said, accurately, the equitable power of the United States courts is not so limited. And it's pretty clear that even if the enjoined acts were outside the territory of the United States, the government couldn't violate them. He asked what argument they had proving that a court's ability to rule in equity, quote, stops at the country's borders. The government's lawyers responded that it was pretty simple. The government physically removed people, so the court no longer had jurisdiction. But that would be an incredible claim, because if Trump can defeat a court's jurisdiction by ignoring a court's order and removing people from the court's jurisdiction, then there's really no such thing as law. When Judge Boasberg pressed the DOJ for more information, a lawyer said, quote, when the planes are in the sky and there is sensitive national security, that's not a call that can be made by a judge. They made one more argument that the president has inherent authority to move military forces, but of course these were not military flights. Judge Boasberg set a hearing for the next day and demanded that the DOJ provide information related to questions such as how many planes departed the United States at any time on Saturday, carrying people being deported solely on the basis of the proclamation, how many people in the category were on those planes, what foreign countries did those planes land in, what time did the planes leave the US, etc., etc. Now, many people have pointed out many constitutional infirmities with the Alien Enemies Act. Just off the top of my head, it runs afoul of the Fifth Amendment's right to due process. There is discrimination based on nationality, which is a protected class. And of course, it violates the right against indefinite civil detention. Japanese internment was, of course, a black spot on this country's history. And the Korematsu case, which approved of Japanese internment, was already...
Yeah, and then they looked at that and they were like, let's do it extra style. They were like, the problem with the Japanese internment thing was that we did internment inside of America. What we should have been doing was sending them to a slave labor prison camp, for-profit prison camp in El Salvador instead. That was also unacceptable, but it was during fucking World War II. Right now, there is no World War II. Trump is just deciding it. Trump's like, yep, I've decided, you know, seeing a Guatemalan is like my own personal Holocaust. Seeing a Guatemalan and the Nazis were overtaking the entire European countries. They overtaking the rest of the European continent. We're sorry. It's just happening. It's got to happen. It's like my Pearl Harbor. It's my own personal Pearl Harbor.
Mostly repealed by Trump versus Hawaii. So one would assume the Supreme Court, including this Supreme Court, would find the Alien Enemies Act to be unconstitutional. But that's not a given, so by its terms, does the Alien Enemies Act even apply to the Venezuelans under these circumstances? Well, first of all, the US is not at war with any other country, so why would the act apply to Venezuelans now? Well, the government has this one weird trick. Tren de Aragua and the Venezuelan government are one and the same, they claim. Trump's proclamation says Venezuela is, quote, a hybrid criminal state. Evidence irrefutably demonstrates.
If this government was remotely competent, they would do like another 9/11, but they're not competent enough, so they would fuck that up 100%. If they try to do like a 9/11 so they could, you know, do a false flag and basically do martial law and stuff like that. But they're so goddamn incompetent, they would fuck it up along the way in a spectacular fashion, where virtually everyone with a brain cell would understand, like, oh no, this was like Trump's own 9/11, right? Everybody knows he tried to do it. And yet his fans still would be like, actually, that's not the case. It was the Guatemalans. It was the Mexicans that did it. And you'd be like, but we found Trump. Like, he openly admitted he did it. And then his supporters would be like, well, that's good. It's actually good for the country to do a 9/11 every now and then. That's all he needs right now, to just like escalate the situation.
The Tren de Aragua has invaded the United States.
Yeah, unfortunately, they cut the budget and fired half the guys who would do 9/11 too. Exactly. They've outsourced them. So they can't even do 9/11 no more.
Continues to invade, attempt to invade, and threaten to invade the country, perpetrated irregular warfare within the country, and used drug trafficking as a weapon against our citizens. The government argues, quote, given how significantly Tren de Aragua has become intertwined in the fabric of Venezuela's state structures, it is a de facto arm of the Maduro regime. Now, that seems factually inaccurate, but it also seems legally inaccurate. Number one, only Congress has the power to declare war based on Article 1 of the Constitution, and the plain text of the Alien Enemies Act doesn't seem to support the conclusion that the U.S. is at war. But the government says that the president, as commander-in-chief, is the one who gets to decide when America is officially at war. The Supreme Court has considered the parameters of war in the context of two occasions, both in the aftermath of World War II. In 1948, the Supreme Court heard an appeal from William Ledecky, a German who was classified as an alien enemy and was subject to deportation. By the time the government moved to deport Ledecky, World War II had been over for 8 months. And writing for the majority, Justice Felix Frankfurter argued that despite Germany's defeat, the state of hostilities persisted. Quote, war does not cease with a ceasefire order, and the power to be exercised.
I think it's pretty funny to like try to deport a German while simultaneously doing Operation Paperclip. Like, they were like, listen, it's a one-to-one type situation. You know, we got to deport a couple of these fucking crowds because we got new ones coming in and they have PhDs, you know? Sure, they were Nazis that directly, they weren't just sympathizers of the Nazis, they were literally directly doing Nazi shit, but have you seen their rockets? Okay? Have you seen the rockets that they were doing? We need that.
The president, such as that conferred by the Act of 1798, is a process which is not exhausted when the shooting stops. Thus, Frankfurter emphasized that the president had the authority to determine whether individuals who were considered a security risk during the war remained a threat. And Frankfurter stated, quote, it is not for us to question a belief by the president that enemy aliens who were justifiably deemed fit subjects for internment during active hostilities do not lose their potency for mischief during the period of confusion and conflict, which is characteristic of a state of war, even when the guns are silent, but the peace of peace has not come. And the court's decision was also grounded in the belief that the Alien Enemy Act precluded judicial review of removal orders. In a dissenting opinion, Justice Hugo Black and 3 other justices pointed out that Ledecky was a legally admitted resident and should be afforded due process rights. Black argued that the Alien Enemies Act only applied when an individual could assist a foreign government, and with the Allied victory, Germany no longer had a government Ledecky could assist. And in the case of United States ex rel Jagler versus Carusi, the Supreme Court ruled that a German national who had been classified as an enemy alien held in custody following his arrest could not be detained indefinitely. The court decided the war with Germany officially ended in 1951 with the joint resolution to terminate the state of war between the United States and the government of Germany. And Ledecky arguably doesn't stand for the proposition that only the president gets to say when America is at war. As Ledecky and the Jagler cases acknowledge, World War II began and ended with a determination by Congress, not the president. But now Trump has an argument for that as well. The political question doctrine makes the case unreviewable. The political question doctrine is a principle of constitutional law that holds that certain issues are beyond the jurisdiction of the courts because they're best handled by the political branches. And when courts determine that an issue is a political question, they decline to hear the case, reasoning that the Constitution entrusts the matter to elected officials rather than the judiciary. And here the government claims that whether the U.S. is at war or under invasion is a political question that is decided by the president. Trump argues that the TRO undermines Trump's, quote, inherent Article 2 authority to repel such an invasion and conduct foreign affairs. And the government asserts that, quote, federal courts have consistently held that the determination by the executive of whether there is an invasion is a non-justiciable political question. On the other side of the fence, the Supreme Court's position has long been that judicial review is available to immigrants detained under the act. For example, in United States versus Thomas Williams, where Chief Justice Marshall, sitting as a circuit judge, granted a writ of habeas corpus, releasing a British citizen detained during the War of 1812. And the second part of the statute gives the president power to, quote, establish any other regulations necessary for removal, which suggests that some judicial review is cognizable. And the Ledecky case does not say that the president's power to establish when the U.S. is at war is unlimited. And during World War II, the courts decided hundreds of cases involving the Alien Enemy Act, and the courts provided some meaningful review to the question that triggered the statute, whether the detainees had connections with countries on which America had declared war. If they did, then the government could decide what to do with them. But if the courts can decide whether a person is connected to those countries, then it would seem like they also have the power to decide the other statutory predicate, whether the U.S. is at war or under an invasion from a foreign country or government. Either way, you'd think the detainees would have some modicum of due process rights. But what about the statute's use of the word invasion? Well, Texas challenged Biden's handling of immigration by arguing that illegal migration and drug smuggling constitute an invasion under Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3 of the Constitution, which allows states to engage in war if, quote, actually invaded or facing imminent danger. Using this argument, Texas attempted to justify policies like detaining and deporting undocumented immigrants, as well as placing barriers in the Rio Grande, despite federal law preempting state action in immigration enforcement. Arguably, this interpretation was inconsistent with the Constitution's text and original meaning. The founders seemed to intend the term invasion to refer to organized armed attacks, not migration or smuggling. James Madison, in his report of 1800, explicitly defined invasion as an operation of war, and the Constitution's Guarantee Clause, which ensures federal protection against invasion and domestic violence, further supports this reading. Domestic violence historically referred to rebellions against state governments, not modern interpersonal violence. And a legal interpretation doctrine called nocitur a suicis, a word is known by its context, reinforces that invasion should be understood alongside terms like war and domestic violence, which imply force or conflict. If Texas's interpretation were accepted, it could distort constitutional war powers and open the door for states to claim emergency military authority over broad issues unrelated to armed conflict. There's also a fairly robust body of law developed during the Bush administration's war on terror that indicates the courts do not completely defer to the president about when the U.S. is actively at war. The Military Commissions Act of 2006 stripped Guantanamo detainees of the ability to file habeas corpus petitions in U.S. courts. And in 2008, the Supreme Court reaffirmed the constitutional rights of detainees at Guantanamo to challenge their detention in federal court through habeas corpus. The Supreme Court ruled that the MCA provision was unconstitutional because it did not provide an adequate alternative process for detainees to challenge their imprisonment. The ruling established that constitutional protections apply to detainees held by the U.S. government, even in overseas military facilities. That was a 5-4 decision written by now retired Justice Anthony Kennedy, though Justice Roberts wrote a dissenting opinion. And there were many cases during the war on terror where the lower courts scrutinized whether detainees were part of al-Qaeda. And based on that precedent, the courts should have a role in determining whether someone is a member.
All of this works on top of one another, okay? Pre-existing expansions, vague definitions of terrorism, basically feed into how we got here. I need you to understand that, because the war on terror greatly expanded the pre-existing mandate that the federal government had in terms of unlawful detentions and a denial of habeas corpus, and we have been building up towards this moment since then. If you think like, oh, this is shocking how this happened, like how could this have happened to us? It's like it happened slowly, it happened deliberately, and Trump is, as I always say, the logical conclusion of how this kind of stuff works. Not a single thing that Trump says is directionally unique from the Republican Party in general. Okay? He just says the quiet part out loud. That's the difference. And Chatter, who used the boiling frog analogy, that's an interesting one to use here, because we're boiling right now, and there's still plenty of fucking frogs who don't recognize it. Bro, there's only a couple thousand people in Tren de Aragua. I don't get why no one's talking about how relatively small it is, because it's not about Tren de Aragua. It's not about crimes at all. They literally said that the people that they were actually deporting were Tren de Aragua with no justification whatsoever, like ridiculous justifications, claiming like, oh, well, this guy's a tattoo that resembles the Real Madrid logo. We decided that's Tren de Aragua. He has a video, or he has a fucking Instagram post where he does this. This is, they said this is a gang sign now. And what they also openly recognize is that, yes, they don't have any criminal background, but that's because they're something more sinister than a regular style terrorist. These are terrorists who are not even being caught, except for the fact that they were apprehended by ICE agents. But besides that, they were just mastermind terrorists. So them not having a criminal background is not enough to claim that they're not terrorists. So to answer your question, it has nothing to do with Tren de Aragua, its size, or the truth at all, and everything to do with following the Trump administration's agenda of mass deportations and finding whatever justification they can to engage in these deportations. Yeah, they were apprehended from the homes they listed on their legal residency documentation, which is what mastermind terrorists would do, obviously. Duh. Above board shit. That's who you got to look out for. The guy that has a temporary protected status and is a documented non-citizen on U.S. soil, living in a house that he just like actively tells the government he's living in. That's the guy you got to, the ones hiding in plain sight being Venezuelan out in the real world, that's who you got to really look out for. And then you got to catch them in their legal residence, and then you got to deport them to fucking not even Venezuela, but El Salvador. Not even Venezuela. They're Venezuelan. We're deporting them to El Salvador instead, to a fucking no jurisdiction, no human rights, concentration labor camp
of Tren de Aragua. And another major difference is that the detainees who had never set foot on U.S. soil, whereas the Venezuelan deportees arguably have more rights since they were living in the United States. Now, the judge asked the government to file a response under seal answering 5 questions, but the Trump administration filed a motion to stay the order, asserting that the government does not need to answer the questions, it can't answer them on such a tight timeline, and the questions jeopardize national security. Now, the administration claims that revealing this information would have a catastrophic impact on U.S. foreign policy, and it is considering invoking the state secrets privilege. Quote, even addressing the questions in an ex parte submission would result in an immediate flood of media inquiries and demands for the information, subjecting the diplomatic relationships at issue to unacceptable uncertainty.
Remember, we got here because Donald Trump falsely kept claiming that like every undocumented migrant is responsible for like at least 10 kills, okay? 10 confirmed kills in America. They're killing tens of millions a year. Okay, he would just go on rallies and just be like, undocumented migrants, they are, oh, you think you go to the Home Depot and you see a bunch of like Hispanic dudes waiting outside? You know what they're waiting for? Not to do like, contracted labor work or whatever. They're there to kill. That's the labor. They're actually hitmen. And they're really good hitmen because they never get caught. So it doesn't even reflect in the fucking crime statistics at all. The best kind of hitmen. They're doing 1 million murders a day. Okay? That's the way that Trump was operating. And now, remember, the first week, they did those PR things, right? They did those like PR raids where they'd be like, here, we found a real severe criminal here. And he's being deported. He's a pedophile. This person is a this person is the best rapist in Boston. Like, there was a rapist Olympics and he won. He's a gold medalist rapist. Okay? And the Biden administration wasn't prosecuting him for some fucking weird reason, right? They would just like say shit like that. And then you actually pour through the data and it turns out dudes are getting sent back to Guatemala for fucking trespass. 52% of the people that were deported in the first batch had not done a single crime. They had not done any crime. Just they went to their homes and were like, all right, peace. And the rest were not like severe criminals. The rest were just simply low-level offenders, like, you know, people that got caught trespassing. So what happened? Now we've moved beyond that. We're like, yeah, there's no evidence, but I think he's a terrorist. That's where we're at now. The dude that got sent back to Guatemala for trespass, I covered it on the show. He was here for fucking 20 years, man. How insane is that? Dude's been here for 20 years, been paying fucking into Social Security through ITIN. Give the guy a fucking citizenship, man. What are you doing? That's psychotic. And the thing is, my statement on this matter is not radical, is not far-fetched. It is the majority opinion. When given two options, mass deportation or mass amnesty, conditional amnesty, Americans overwhelmingly vote in favor of conditional amnesty. How insane is that? That's justice? Deporting a dude who's been living here, who, like, America is his home for 20 fucking years because he doesn't have paperwork? Are you fucking joking? Give him paperwork. What's wrong with you? It's insane.
How the court will address those demands. And I will remind you that an ex parte in-camera submission is seen only by the court. And frankly, there should be media questions about this case. Now, as for the alleged threat to the relationship between the US and other countries, the judge simply asked for the information about when the flights left, landed, and who was on them. And Rubio and Bukele have not been shy about the budding relationship between the US and El Salvador. A month ago, they were both at Bukele's residence, and the State Department's public press release about their meeting notes said that he agreed to take custody of members of Tren de Aragua and MS-13 and, quote, criminal migrants from any country. Rubio and Bukele made an agreement publicly for El Salvador to take incarcerated Americans, quote, and in an extraordinary gesture never before extended by any country, President Bukele offered to house in his jails dangerous American criminals, including U.S. citizens and legal residents. And of course, Bukele and Rubio tweeted about this affair while it was happening in real time.
Yeah, dude, they said they were going to also, that's the other thing. They already opened up the floodgates. Like, they are going to send Americans there too. Okay? It is, Bukele is the worst Palestinian ever. I know. Don't even call him Palestinian. Don't do that. Even though he is. Nobody recognizes that, okay? We don't recognize him as a Palestinian. He's something different. Don't claim that, man.
The government released footage of masked men shaving the detainees' heads.
Nice room. How dare you? That's a good one, dude. Okay. That's so stupid. Oh, that's funny. Okay, chatter. That was good. That was good. You got me.
Then whisking the detainees out of prison and onto planes. The deportees did not arrive in El Salvador under the cover of darkness. The media was present, and when the planes landed, the governments of the two countries celebrated. The Trump administration literally made a deportation hype video. But Judge Boasberg gave the Trump administration another 24 hours to file the government's response. The judge noted that, quote,
a lot of YouTubers were allowed to enter the jail. I know. I watched this, like, fucking dumbass YouTuber from Mexico that went talking about how sick the prison is. And I couldn't believe it. Like, I could not believe the horrifying conditions that they were just promoting. They weren't just showing these horrifying conditions. They were like, this is sick. It was insane, dude.
The government's motion is the first time it has suggested that disclosing the information requested by the court could amount to the release of state secrets.
Yeah,
to date, in fact,
was it
the government
Luisito slander? Was it Luisito? Let me see. I'll remember his face if I see him. I think it was. Yeah.
Next, we will enter an isolation cell, which is where prisoners are sent when they commit an infraction. It
was also AI dubbed. 55 million views on this. Yeah. Luisito Comunica. 55 million. Dude, this is like, here we are at the walls of Auschwitz. It's a very nice prison. Look at the conditions of this prison. Like, what the fuck? What do you mean? Are you insane? What are you doing? He also, it's not like it's not like he was doing MTV Cribs, but it's not like he was doing what the Red Cross did with the concentration camps, right? During the Holocaust, where they lied. They went to like the one concentration camp that Germany set up as like propaganda to be like, we're not killing Jews. Come on, look at this beautiful concentration camp. Like, you know, hide the bodies before the Red Cross comes. He went there. This is like if you went to Auschwitz and you saw like Jews being put in the fucking oven and being like, and this is very good. Like, that's literally what this is. He went to a fucking slave concentration camp and straight up was like, look at how dope this concentration camp is. I mean, look at this. Look.
Only light entrance, which is where prisoners are sent when they commit an infraction. The only light entrance is a hole in the ceiling. How many people did you kill?
So many YouTube videos on CCOT are bad and the comments are even worse. Yeah, I know. The same guy, Luisito Comunica, has been criticizing Sheinbaum's administration for a clandestine training and execution camp in Jalisco a few days ago. He does half-ass commentary like Asma, but for Mexico, he's a centrist, by the way. Bro, how are you calling yourself a centrist and you are glazing a human rights violations prison, like a serial violation of human rights prison? Every fucking humanitarian org has written extensively about this place. Why is every centrist a fucking rabid neo-Nazi freak when push comes to shove? I love being a centrist. Hello, welcome to my centrist commentary channel. We are sitting outside of Auschwitz. Again, like that's what you're doing here, okay? It's super sick. They all freak out about the gulags, but promote this shit. Yeah, because gulags is done socialistly. That's what it is. Every apolitical centrist guy turns into a fucking neo-Nazi at the first sight of like an opportunity to get 55 million views on a YouTube video. Oh. Shoot migrants' legs, build alligator moat. Behind Trump's ideas for the border. Nice. I did not pack my apolitical hat, chat. I'm sorry.
Had made no claim that the information at issue is even classified. The essence of the judge's order is that he wants to give the government another chance to decide if they really want to invoke the state secrets or other privilege, and he also may be appeal-proofing all of his decisions. We'll see. And fair or not, government litigants usually get multiple chances to comply with court orders. But still, for the rule of law to hold up, at some point judges are going to have to get serious about contempt and other measures. In the meantime, President Trump said that Judge Boasberg should be impeached.
I asked March, how's it going? He said, I lost everything.
This triggered a response from Chief Justice John Roberts, who said, quote, for more than 2 centuries, it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning judicial decision. The normal appellate process exists for that purpose. Notwithstanding, it is extraordinary for the sitting Chief Justice of the Supreme Court to weigh in on statements made about the judiciary in basically real time. But in a notice signed by Attorney General Pam Bondi, the Justice Department said it would not answer further questions on the flights. Quote, the government maintains that there is no justification to order the provision of additional information, and that doing so would be inappropriate because even accepting plaintiff's account of the facts, there was no violation of the court's written order since relevant flights left U.S. airspace, and so their occupants were removed before the order issued, and the court's earlier oral statements were not independently enforceable as injunctions. Additionally, Robert Cerna...
If you think about it, it's your money as well. Thank God there's a fucking daily withdrawal limit, okay? That's all I'm going to say.
Field Office Director for Enforcement and Removal Operations at U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement stated in a signed court declaration that the immigrants on a 3rd deportation flight following Saturday's restraining order were not removed under the Alien Enemies Act, but under Title VIII, a separate final removal authority. Now, how this could be legally possible is charitably unclear. He said, quote, to avoid any doubt, no one on any flight departing the United States after 7:25 p.m. EDT on March 15, 2025 was removed solely on the basis of the proclamation at issue. You'll recall that Judge Boasberg issued his temporary restraining order at 6:48 p.m. Eastern, while court records show that one deportation flight landed in Honduras at 7:36 p.m. and another in El Salvador at 8:02 p.m. Cerna also clarified that although President Trump signed the proclamation invoking the wartime law on Friday, ICE understood it to take effect only after the White House published it Saturday afternoon. He added that approximately 258 additional immigrants fall within the, with 54 of them already in detention. And not surprisingly, the Trump administration has already appealed the temporary restraining order to the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, which normally isn't a thing you can do. We've talked about that before. But written briefings are due on Wednesday, and the panel's not great for the plaintiffs. It includes Justin Walker, who is about as much of a Trump ideologue as they come. But the administration may be relying on the optics and assuming that people are not going to want to go to bat for putative gang members and terrorists. Now, these are unprecedented times, but taking a moment to increase your online privacy is one way to bring greater peace of mind. Luckily, there are people out there who can help, and that's why we recommend signing up for today's sponsor, Incogni, because the amount of personal and private data that circulates out there is truly horrifying. Incogni removes your...
They asked me for $27 after your interview, Hassan. What the fuck? What are you talking about?
Personal data from online data brokers by reaching out directly and forcing them to take your personal info down. And if those data brokers resist, Incogni will take care of that too, because Incogni fights back. And right now you can use my link in the description or the code LegalEagle for an exclusive 60% off discount. Now, data brokers are the reason why in the US you can...
I want to see the...
Japan, and I got both of you guys gifts. This one's for you. This is a Palestinian movement in Japan.
Thank you.
Solidarity with Palestine, and this is a little train.
Oh.
He said, oh.
For public transit. But
all right, listen, great to see you. Okay, take care.
All right.
That is not what happened, man. Bernie confirmed not autistic. Yeah. What? I don't know how to link my email, but they asked for a $27 dono after that convo. What convo? What are you saying? I don't know what you're fucking talking about. This motherfucker's interviewing Bernie Sanders, AOC.
Peace. Oh my God.
They are not happy with the chair we're providing for AOC. Maybe this one is better. Let's see. Bros, okay.
Geese.
Bernie made a statement on your gift. I'm sending these emails just to figure before our fighting oligarchy tour. I want to show you this sick ass little train trinket from Japan that a Make-A-Wish kid gave me. I did give him, I do have Communist Party merch. I forgot to bring it because I was up at 5 a.m. I wish I had longer time to talk to them. There was so much more I wanted to ask them, and we didn't have a lot of room, unfortunately. I wanted to talk more about specifically Palestine. I wanted to talk about how like Palestine is being used as a way to erode civil liberties and get open up the door to more conversation about it specifically. But that's for a different time. On that note, we gotta boogie. We're gonna leave soon. So I had a bunch of like cool questions that I wanted to ask him. How are you feeling? He says -500. Thank God. Oh, here. Are you hungry? I have a sick club sandwich and some French fries for you. Okay. All right. I mean, I ordered it. It's too much for me, and now I don't know what to do with it. But anyway, you have cancer? What? No, I don't have cancer. Why? What the fuck? All right, everybody. Love you all. This was very eventful. Definitely a lot better than I thought it was going to be. I was definitely very worried about the events, but it turned out really good, and that's because of March. So everybody say thank you, March. Wait, you got something to say? What do you want to say?
You left your moms in the hood? Stick to my stomach, fam.
I take back everything I said. I take back everything I said about thanking March. I think I'm revoking the thanking. I'm taking it back. We are not thanking March. But anyway, I'll be back tomorrow from LA, obviously. I'm going back to LA right now. And I'll be live, same time, same place, baby. You already know. Love you all. See you tomorrow. Peace.